November 6th, 2018. This is when Extinction came out, and this changed something really important in ARK survival. In this update, it added cryopods. And cryopods have been an important asset ever since when it came to ARK, enabling people to travel great distances with really slow tames stored in their back pocket. Players being able to go into the dangerous caves and release cryopods inside, helping them deal with caves like the hard ice cave on the island and more. But it wasn't always this way. Before this date, there was no such thing as cryopods. People had to travel around on Quetzal buses and use platform-saddled dinosaurs to get their tames around the Ark. And this is what we've been getting used to again in ARK Ascended, until now. Very, very soon we will be getting a patch that will introduce cryopods back into the game. And today we're going to be talking about why this is a good thing and why it's also a bad thing, as well as the recent updates that have been released around the new cryopods and what we know about them so far. One really important feature with the cryopod is it enables you to put your dinos in a capsule and keep it clean around your base. This also helps with optimization and not having to load in so many animated creatures while you're at your homestead. The main thing that they're helpful for unofficial though is definitely the dino slot count, where you can definitely tuck them away and breed more dinos and tame more dinos without being worried about having to kill off really important tames. It's also been really handy to have cryopods to be able to pod up your boss tames and bring them to an obelisk and be able to do the boss like that, instead of having to train them all the way from where you live to your nearest obelisk, which sometimes can be very far away. Cryopods are also essential for getting tames unstuck. Let's not be dishonest here. In ASA, we still have the issue of dinosaurs getting stuck in certain places within the mesh, within caves and all sorts of places. So having cryopods helps refresh that animation and get them out of these sticky spots where you wouldn't be able to do this in a normal situation without cryopods. Cryopods also help with making a fob and bringing your most important tames along on the journey. Never was it this easy to have a pocket giga and go to battle, or even have some stegos in your back pocket to soak some turrets, instead of having to walk a really slow stego really far away to the enemy's base. Either way, my point is, cryos have been very essential in ARK survival for several different reasons. Not just the top of the floater ones we can think of off the top of our heads, of just being able to store dinos away. There are many other reasons that are also very good, but it's now time to go over some of the cons that cryofridges and cryopods have introduced into the game since they've been implemented. And one of the biggest ones of this is it just makes things extremely easy. Like I was saying about the Giganotosaurus only being in your pocket, one of the strongest and most meanest creatures on the Ark. Having that firepower in your pocket just to release wherever you like, you gotta admit that is a really strong ability to have. Whereas normally they walk around and they suck a lot of stamina out and it takes a while to traverse to point. There used to be a stage in the game that Gigas weren't so slow and they had a lot more stamina than they do these days. From when I first used Gigas to now, they are a lot slower than what they used to be. They are a very fraction of what they used to be, considering their speed. Like when I used to do meat runs from Craig's Island to the volcano, they would go there in a split second. It wouldn't take long to run over there on a Giga. But why run at all when you have them in a cryopod and you can just release them straight at the volcano? Fly over on a pteranodon and cut that speed right in half. You gotta admit, sometimes cryopods are pretty OP. And another thing they're really quite OP for, which I have seen people use with cryopod mods on this time round, is being able to uncryopod tames inside of caves, or even put teleporters inside of caves. If you think about the hard snow cave and what you would actually be able to fit in it if you're doing the whole thing from start to finish, you're not going to fit anything too big in there. You might get a polar bear in there or a baryonyx, but there's nothing too huge going in that cave. There's got some tight corners, and you're mostly going to be relying on your shotgun or your sword or something like that. So being able to uncryopod things in caves like that, like full-on Rexes, Allosaurus, or your strongest Spino, is extremely strong when that was definitely not the purpose of the cave. Caves are supposed to be a challenge, they're not supposed to be a cave walk. One thing you got to remember when it comes to games like this, if you remove the grind and the difficulty, the game becomes too easy and you get no game. You'll be finished in a couple of weeks and there'll be no point in playing it anymore. There is a good reason there is grind and restrictions there when it comes to ARK Survival, and one of the biggest reasons is longevity. Having some challenge is good, and it's what makes the game a lot of fun. Cryopods are a very good way to remove a lot of those challenges, unfortunately, when it comes to certain circumstances. We could talk about this all day, but let's talk about some of the changes when it comes to cryopods when they come to ARK Ascended. So, Zed released a patch for the Discord. In the Discord, if you're following along, the PTR stuff, the public test realms and all that. And they were talking about testing out cryopods. Now, we don't know all of the changes that are happening to cryopods, but we do know what we've been told so far. But they are saying Cryopod and cryofridge are now level 50 unlockable engrams. This is not really a revelation, at least when it comes to normal cryopods, because they usually unlock at level 51. However, it does make a big change when it comes to cryofridges, which used to be a level 88 unlock. Now they will be unlocked at the same time together, but is level 50 unlockable a bit too low level for this? I asked my community how they thought about it, and I saw a comment in here that actually sounded really quite viable when it came to things like cryopods. Their comment was, I feel like it should be a Tekgram, right? Like amongst the other crafting recipes, it feels like it belongs there. Like, does it make sense to be able to capture a living dinosaur in a Pokeball and carry it around before even being able to learn a canteen? My suggestion is having it unlocked on your first boss battle with the tech replicator and such. I feel like it fits there better. Opinions? And to be honest, I think they have a really good point. Honestly, with ARK, a lot of the time, and this is where people will fall off a lot of the time, is when it comes to earning towards bosses. Having something you could build up towards, say you unlock in something like Gamma Brood or Monkey or even Dragon, might be a really good incentive to be able to do these things. And it would be a really nice reward you would get from this. The only thing I would say is don't make it craftable with element, because then a lot of the time you're going to be kind of locked behind having to craft and do boss fights to get the element to be able to craft these items. I think it would be really something nice to unlock from one of those kind of bosses though that you could look forward to. It would be good incentive to do the bosses, and it would be a nice progression tier since you could use the platforms early game until you get to the bosses and then have the cryopods and be able to make them. I just want to be clear, I don't think it should take a replicator to make them or anything like that. You should be able to craft them normally, but just having them unlocked from the boss. There are other comments we could go over in a minute that fight on both sides of the opinion though that I found interesting. Either or opinion, I think it's very healthy to discuss topics like this, whether you don't like it or whether you do like it. It's always good to have a chat about things and see if we can get the game the best way possible. Perhaps having some feedback might help when the devs look over things like this, and I think it's important to have discussion. So further on this patch list, they say when a cryofridge is placed, they take 5 minutes to activate. I think this is fair enough. Like a normal fridge, it's going to take, I don't know, pretty much all day to get cold, so 5 minutes sounds just fine to me. But I think the big reason why this is a thing is probably the next part of this patch. Cryopod can only be released within a range of an activated cryo fridge. This is set to 3,500, which was said by Hilo Paint in my discussion thread that this amount equals to 16 foundations from the cryo fridge. They are not a big fan of the range, and to be honest, 16 foundations is not a huge amount. If you think about feeding troughs, they are roughly about 11 foundations in width on where they feed to. So I mean, when you think about it in a feeding trough sense, it does seem like a lot more space. Either way, the idea with this is to make it so cryopods are more of a storage facility when it comes to at-home stuff, making it a dino barn in a sense. I think ARK are trying to lean away from the fact that this is going to be a travel item that you travel around and release dinos out in the wild, but this can bring a brand new problem to the table, especially when it comes to PvE servers. And that issue is clutter. Much like on PvE servers where you have the problem of people leaving traps out everywhere, Now you're going to have cryofridge places left out everywhere, especially around popular caves and things like that, where you get tons of sleeping bags or foundations with beds. Instead, you're going to find these little box areas with cryopod unpodding facilities, and there's nothing you can do about this but wait for it to expire if this person, you know, at least lets it decay. Because the matter of the fact, most players will not pick up these kind of things after they've put them down, for the main reason that being able to pick up things is not always an option, especially when it's on official PvE, because the timer is so short, meaning they wouldn't want to break the things they've put down there to get it to work. So I think this is going to create a big mess problem when it comes to those kind of servers. Whereas on PvP it's going to be fine, because at least you can destroy that kind of thing and get it out the way. You won't be able to do this on PvE, which means more clutter, more mess, and more things to load in around your caves and stuff, which is just going to be annoying. Joe Biden's husband suggested on their comment, though, you could just put the cryofridge on a Quetzal on a platform saddle. But then again, that's another kind of thing. Will they work on a platform saddle is your next question. I feel like they kind of need to be able to stop this PvE problem. It'll be much less of a problem if you're able to have things on platform saddles, although it will still be a thing for those a bit lazier than that. Either way, let me know what you think about that certain problem, and what would be the way to make that work properly, do you think? Are you happy with the range and that you need a cryofridge for this now? Or are you unhappy with these changes and what they mean for the game in the future? Next on this change list is PvP only. Cryopod cannot be released if there are enemies nearby. This is also set to about 15-ish foundations. And from what I understood looking at Twitter, this is like human enemies, and it can be dinosaur enemies as well, but mostly human enemies. This is going to make it difficult if you're at your PvP base and maybe you stored some things away and you can't release your dinos that you need to be able to when people are getting too close inside your base. Someone could just sit really close inside your base or nearby and stop this being a possibility. Same if you had a fob. Someone could just creep up on your fob, and then that could be really frustrating to try and get something out. Although you could always use turrets to get rid of these people. There can be situations where sometimes you just want to pop out a cryopod and get this creature out, but you can't because someone's too close. Which could mean having to think about PvP situations where you make sure people can't get that close within your build. Either way is something to think about on this one. Next thing is dinos cannot be cryopoded if damaged within 60 seconds. I think this is fair enough. I have been guilty myself of using a cryopod mod on Ace, and you know, something's dying to a Spino. I'm like, and I get my little, you know, cryopod and I suck it straight up, and I'm like, oh well, my dino will be fine, it won't die, you know. I think that is really quite silly and OP. So I think this is a fair enough change to balance it out. I think this is fair, completely fair on this one. And it still means if you do tame something out in the wild, you are able to cryopod it and take it home and put it in your cryo fridge. You don't need a cryo fridge to be able to put in things inside of the cryopod. You only need it to release things. So I think this is fair enough on this one. And the last one, Dino's mating cooldown will now tick down correctly within a cryopod. I think that's perfectly fine and good for breeding and all that. You have less clutter around the base with your breeders, because depending on your breeding rates, you'll have a lot of breeders out if you have less good ones to be able to increase for mutations and all that good stuff. So having it ticking down in the pod, definitely a good feature. Either way, that is what we know so far and what we've been told about by said. All this information you can find in the PTR patch notes part of the ARK Discord. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I am interested to hear what your opinions are on this whole change. Let's get that discussion going and see what we think about cryopods in the new version of ARK. And what else do you think they are going to change? Because they said in this one, it's still under development. Regarding portability is the main thing. What else do you think is different with the cryopod when it comes to ARK Ascended? Or do you think it's going to be exactly the same with just a few restrictions added on top? Either way, my name's been Kiah. Sorry for the kind of nasally read off today. I am very ill at the moment and trying my best to get content out to you guys. and continue posting videos. Evil winter colds and all that, how about that? But either way, thank you for watching, I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!